Hello and welcome again to PR Presents. Hope you've all been keeping well. With Christmas less than a month away, for many it's a nostalgic time of thinking about when you were a kid and the toys and games which you hope you'd wake up to on Christmas morning. Well, today I'm pleased to be joined by an old friend of mine from middle school who, it's fair to say, has got a collection that is way beyond just something he had as a kid in the 80s. Ron Smith, great to see you again.
Hello Patrick, good to see you too.
Ron, it's been over 30 years since we left Isambard Brunel, so where do we start other than, well, where does your love for action figures start?
Well, it starts from, before even Isambard Brunel, really. I suppose any kid in the 80s or being born in the 70s and merging into the 80s, computers weren't what they were today. You had the BBC computers merged with the Spectrums. I mean, it took 15 minutes just to load a computer, didn't it, to get a little stick man to kick a ball or something else like that. So you had your imagination, didn't you? A lot of the kids them days had the imagination, and it allowed me to imagine things, scenes and things from movies and TV shows that you can do. And even now, my son, who's 5, he plays video games and whatever, and he says, "But I can't do that in the game." And I said, "Well, that's why I used to have toys, because I could take that toy and do what I needed to do with it with my imagination, where now you're still limited to the constraints of what the game parameters will allow you." I think a lot of us were the TV generation, wasn't it? So, of all the TV programs, cartoons, the movies, I mean, Star Wars was the one for me. Groundbreaking when you look at it, and what it done for the movie business as a general now, especially the special effects and everything else. And I think I was just won over. I remember my mum coming home from the mini market in North End with a stormtrooper and a C3PO figure, and just saying, "Right, it's on TV tonight. Watch it. Here you go." And that was it. And that was the first two technically action figures, if you didn't count the Fisher Price, if you want to go into that sort of realm of things. And back in the day when you had little Fisher Price toys, didn't you? I mean, that was big back then as well.
In terms of toy shops in Portsmouth as a kid, I can, think of a few contenders myself, but which ones did you have your fondest memories of going to and adding to your collection?
I think Woolworths will always stand out as that place where it done a bit. Well, to be honest, I look at B&M these days and I think, well, that is now just an upscale Woolworths. Well, Woolworths ever shut, I'll never know. But my fondest memories are you get on the push bike, 8 years old, and trundling down to Woolworths and picking up an Action Force figure or a G.I. Joe figure or something like that. But then if you look back to Commercial Road, which is the premier place was the shop in Portsmouth. Mm-hmm. There was a toy shop called Zodiac Toys.
Oh yes, there's a name.
Round by the bus lane is where the buses used to come in, by the McDonald's there. You had Zodiac Toys, and that was just like walking into like heaven for kids, I think, because it was like it's before Toys R Us was in Portsmouth, and it is the only place that you have that amount of toys on hand. So I think that was just a godsend. And I think, again, even Argos, the laminated Book of Dreams.
Oh, yes. I love that at Christmas time, the Argos catalogue, and they've stopped doing it now.
To me, going down Commercial Road, Argos was always in the Tricorn Centre.
It was, wasn't it? That's right, originally.
Love it or hate it, the Tricorn Centre, it was a big bit of concrete, but it had some kind of character to it. It's almost like someone in the 70s tried to imagine a futuristic town or whatever and built like little shops around it, kind of thing you'd see in a RoboCop movie, isn't it? If you try and similarise it. I just remember my nan used to live in Buckland in a big block of flats, the big tie rises, and I used to go round there with the Argos catalogue the day it came out and go, "Oh yeah, look at this, they've got this transformer and this transformer." And by the end of the week, it's like, "Well, there you go, there's £10, go down to Argos and go and get your transformer or whatever." And successfully conned, as I used to say. She is successfully conned, bless her. She's such a caring woman, but yeah, she used to love it. But I think they're the shops that stand out. And there was one other. I lived in Powerscourt Road in North End, which to me, I was in the middle of Powerscourt Road, so you could either go either way. North End was 10 minutes, Copner was 10 minutes up the road, and then Commercial Road's 20 minutes by foot, really. But it's Cozy Cot.
Now in Copner Road.
Yeah, Cotner Road. Cozy Cot was one of them places. It's like one side was for babies, but the other side just had figures and Star Wars figures and just other bits and pieces. And it's always just good to go in there. And we always found ourselves up there as a family. I don't know, because we went for walks to the park or whatever and stuff like that. But yeah, we used to find odds and sods in there. I always remember usually it used to be my sort of Saturday afternoon one. Hit it on a Saturday afternoon, get a toy, come home, and then you put in front of the TV to watch Knight Rider or the A-Team.
What figures have you found yourself being interested in as you've got older, like, you know, going into the 90s and millennium and beyond that?
Going into the 90s, your priorities change as a young adult. And a lot of it is locked away, just put away to one side. I think wrestling, I was into the wrestling. Wrestling is huge. And I think as a young adult, you see all these wrestlers and they're all big and bulky and they've got all the women. You're thinking, oh, maybe, you know, I should, you know, get into that and whatever. And so I collected a lot of wrestling figures back then. Bit of Star Trek, because that was popular. There's on the second win of the Star Trek, The Next Generation. So I think there'll be a lot of people who probably wouldn't admit to it, but they probably did get home at 6 o'clock at night from secondary school and sit there and watch Star Trek, whether they want to admit that or not. Yeah, the collecting did go down quite a bit. It literally wasn't until going back to 99 when Star Wars was re-energized that I was like, oh, now we have all these new figures again. They had just started releasing some before that, 96 and whatever, but the Star Wars figures back then, they're trying to capitalize on the wrestling market. So if they bought out a Han Solo, but he looked like he's on steroids, they had big muscles and it just didn't look right. So they got back to it, and that's where it started again, really. And then as we headed into the 2000s, Doctor Who made a massive comeback 2004, 2005. And again, with any good franchise, they release action figures. And again, it's the sculpting and the engineering now. So in our day, the figures, they're quite plastic, 4 limbs, didn't move that much. And I think what appeals to the adult collectors now is I have an Optimus Prime, say, from the 80s that is still classic, and you still look at it and you have that love for it. But they've now released one that transforms from a robot into the truck, but the truck looks just like it did as the cartoon. There's a love for that engineering. I think people are so enamored with, wow, this is how far we've come with it. And I think collectors like myself, and there are millions of collectors like myself out there with the action figure genre at the moment, that I think that's their appreciation. Things go full circle. So Star Wars released last year, or a year before actually, a retro toy line. And basically what they started doing is reproducing the figures that we had as kids because we wanted them. But I think also what they realised is, why would people be paying £300 for an action figure when they could make one exactly the same and then sell it to you for a tenner still?
Are there any games or tournaments that you ever use these action figures for?
It's never been about, no, not the games and the tournaments really. I think there's more of a collector's community now on the internet. So there's a lot of YouTubers that do reviews. They review the toys. There's ones that go through their old collections. There's one that show their collections, like myself. A lot on Instagram, a hell of a lot. So I think there's a real good community of collectors, and they just want to show and share their experiences, really. And and again, it's that nostalgia thing, and it's about acceptance, because I think where we are now, it's okay to collect toys. It's okay to be a little bit geeky and a bit nerdy. When we were kids, the geeky and the nerds were a little bit more bullied, in my opinion. If you want playing the football or got in with the boys or whatever, you know, you'd be a bit more geeky. You felt a bit like, oh, I can't really sort of mention it. But now you're free to say it. There's a lot more freedom around that, where before it wasn't so.
Well, finally then, on to the future Smith generation. You mentioned about the fact you've got a young boy. What's his view on action figures?
He plays with them. Probably not as much as what I did as a kid. But then again, he's got technology now. He has got into watching cartoons and TV. I draw. He does draw as well. So that's another thing of imagination. But it's quite strange. I, as a father, probably cornered him into Star Wars and a few other things. And even when he is 2 and 3, I was buying him stuff that probably meant for a 5-year-old. But he's still got that, and now he's starting to play with them. So he's getting his imagination, and he is bashing the figures, as we call it, and having a game and throwing them across the room. And I've bought him like Avengers, ones like that, like Marvel, and there's a few others. As for my wife, you know, I think she'd be happy if I sold the whole lot and moved to a bigger house and probably had a few more holidays if that was allowed at the moment. So, but unfortunately, we'll keep it as it is at the moment because it's a nest egg. you know, as much as it's my collection, I'll hand it down to my son, and he can play with most of my toys. In all fairness, it's my son. I mean, there's nothing better than having something when you was a kid, and then sharing it with your son and letting him play with it and looking at the same wonder that he had as you. So yeah, he will. I don't think he'll follow the figure footsteps, but he does appreciate it, and I think he does get a sense that this is Daddy's thing, and yeah, it's a thing of wonder. It's not. It's nothing bad. There's no negatives. There's all positives with it. So which is a really good thing.
Well, Ron, it's been fantastic to catch up with you again after all this time and see what an extensive collection you've built up over the years, which I'm sure is going to get added to by the sounds of it. So keep up the good work. Well, that's it for today. So please take care of yourselves out there and tune in again soon for more PR Presents.